Why is it that we only seek Jesus out as a last resort? And how much does it take to get God's attention anyway? Somebody I know really well is going through a very difficult time right now, and they've found themselves turning more and more to God, but they've been feeling really bad about that because in their minds, they only seek Jesus out when things are going bad. They only seek him out as a last resort. They don't seek him out in the good times. And so that generated these two great questions. The first one I'll deal with in this week's blog. The second one I'll deal with in next week's blog. Why is it that we only seek Jesus out as a last resort? C.S. Lewis famously said that suffering is God's megaphone. It's his way of getting our attention. In a broken world, our inclination is to forget about God, to not think of him, not give him a second thought. When things are going well, when everything's working for us, we tend to focus on what's right in front of us, what's tangible. We tend to think that we are self-sufficient, that we're independent and can handle things on our own. It's only when we experience suffering that illusion of self-sufficiency is crushed. So God allows us to suffer as a way of having us feel our need for him, of having us turn back to him. The reason why we only turn to Jesus as the last resort, because it's our nature to do so. It's our nature to forget about God in the good times. I'm not saying that's a good thing. In fact, the only way we can have the deepest possible relationship with him is if we turn to him at all times, in the good times as well as the bad times. But he understands, he perfectly understands our nature. And that's why he uses suffering as a way to get our attention, to feel our need for him and to call us back to himself. Now, please note, he doesn't direct suffering, send suffering into our lives to do this. He uses the suffering that happens to us as a way to draw us back. Suffering has a way of crushing the illusion that we're self-sufficient, that we're independent, that we can go it alone, that we can do it without God. It has a unique way of calling us back to him, of asking the God question, like, why God? Why is this happening to me? Or, God, are you even real in the first place? Do you really care about me? And all of that is God's way, God's megaphone of calling us back to himself. Some people might find this very problematic. They might think that it's cruel of God to allow suffering in order to call us back to himself. And it would be cruel if there wasn't something much greater at stake, infinitely greater, our eternal destiny. See, in a world where we're inclined by nature to forget about God, where we are inclined by nature to harden our hearts to God, to not give God a second thought, if we continue down that line obstinately, we can eventually turn away from God forever. We can reject God for all eternity. So it would be cruel of God not to try to get our attention in this way. It would be cruel of God not to allow us to feel our need for him, to call us back to himself for the sake of our eternal destiny. A little over 2.5 years ago, I was in the best shape of my life. My resting heart rate was 43, which, according to some people who I spoke with at the time, is approaching Olympic athlete levels. I was running the fastest times I'd ever run in my life. Got my mile down to the lowest lowest point, the fastest speed I've ever had. All my number, when I would go to the doctor, all my numbers, the key numbers, like your blood pressure, cholesterol, all those other key numbers, were the best they've ever been. And then, out of the blue, I have this crazy condition strike me. It was a cervical spinal condition that completely debilitated me. It's a chronic condition. It's getting much better, but it prevented me from doing things that I had just taken for granted being able to do physically. It prevented me from exercising in all the ways that I had been used to. It prevented me from moving around and physically doing things, picking up things that I was used to being able to do. It even at times made simple things excruciating, like sitting in a chair for an extended period of time. It completely crushed me. And in the midst of that, as I was lamenting the loss of physical abilities that I just took for granted before, I heard God's megaphone. I heard him calling me back to himself. I thought that I was putting my trust in him, but what I realized was I wasn't trusting him fully as I could be. I wasn't giving him everything in my life. I was holding back. I was putting some of my trust in what I could do physically and not giving him all of myself. And I realized that during that process, during that period, it was one of the best things that could ever happen for my soul. Because during that period, God brought me to deeper and deeper levels of intimacy with him, deeper and deeper levels of experiencing his love and his grace and his mercy than I could have ever imagined experiencing before. Why are we inclined not to think of God, to turn to Jesus, except as a last resort? Because it's our nature. We have a tendency to forget about God, but God doesn't forget about us. He uses the suffering we experience in our lives as his megaphone to let us feel our need for him so that we will turn back to him. And with our eternal destiny at stake, allowing us to feel our need for God is the most loving thing he could do. So why do you think we'd only turn to Jesus as a last resort? I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can go to the Contact EJ page of the Raising Jesus website and leave your comments there. I pray that whatever you're going through right now or will ever go through, that you will hear God's megaphone calling you back to him and find there a deeper walk with Christ.